1974, Ronald Clark O'Brien was the man who ruined Halloween for every child all over the United States. That was the opinion of attorney Michael Hinton and many other concerned parents across the country. On October 31st, 1974, neighbors Ronald O'Brien and Jim Bates of Deer Park, Texas, took their children out trick-or-treating on a typical Halloween evening. Later that night, Timothy, O'Brien's son, would die from eating poisoned cyanide candy. It was later discovered that his own father was the culprit behind the tainted candy in an unethical attempt to collect insurance money in exchange for his own son's life. Jim Bates goes on record saying he would wait for his group of trick-or-treaters on the sidewalk while O'Brien would go up to the neighbors' doors with the kids. They went up to one particular house where a wall was concealing the front door. When nobody answered, the children ran off to the next house. O'Brien appeared from behind the home a few seconds later and caught up with his group holding 5 candy straws about 20 inches long. They were filled with flavored sugar called pixy sticks. He claimed the residents of the house had answered the back door and given the candy to him for the children. He gave each of the kids 1 pixy stick and then gave the 5th to a boy he recognized from church. It began to drizzle soon after, so they were forced to turn back earlier than expected. O'Brien told his kids they could each pick 1 piece of candy to eat before bed. His son Timothy wanted to try the giant pixy stick but had a hard time opening the top of the straw. He asked his father for help. Timothy ate a little of the sugary powder but said it tasted bitter. His dad gave him some Kool-Aid to wash it down with before sending him to bed. It wasn't long before Timothy O'Brien was in the bathroom throwing up, then began to uncontrollably convulse. Ronald O'Brien made an emergency call saying that his son had eaten poison candy. The ambulance was already in the area and arrived within minutes. Timothy died on the way to the hospital less than an hour after eating the candy. Believing they were dealing with tainted candy, local parents were bringing all of their children's candy from trick-or-treating into the local police station. After an autopsy on Timothy, they found a lethal dose of potassium cyanide in his system. They ran the contents of the pixy stick he ate and found the contaminated source. Officials worked quickly to find the other pixy stick before anyone ate them. They had retrieved the sticks back from the O'Briens and Bates, but they needed to get the last candy stick from the church boy O'Brien handed it to. When they arrived at the boy's house, his parents quickly panicked, not knowing if their son had already eaten the poison concoction. They searched their son's bag of candy, but the pixy stick was not in it. Their son was upstairs still asleep. His mother ran up to his room and found him clutching the candy. It appeared he tried to open it but was unable to and fell asleep. All of the candy tested positive for potassium cyanide. The lab determined that someone had cut off the tops and filled about 2 inches worth of the cyanide in each straw. Then they resealed the tops with heavy-duty staples. Timothy's pixy sticks contained enough cyanide to kill 2 grown men. The other contaminated sticks had enough to kill between 3 and 4 adults in each straw. A few days after Timothy was buried, the O'Brien's insurance agent called the police as they felt the circumstances in the insurance claim submitted by O'Brien were suspicious and disconcerting. The insurance agent said that O'Brien's own wife didn't know about the insurance policies that her husband had taken out on their own children. Insurance policies he had taken out right before that Halloween in 1974. When police initially talked with O'Brien, he claimed he didn't remember which house he had gotten the pixy sticks from, which caused even more concern for law officials since it was O'Brien's own neighborhood. Officers went to all the homes on both streets the O'Briens had visited that night, and none of the residents had given out that particular straw candy. Police then requested for O'Brien to walk with them on the streets to see if it would trigger which house specifically gave him the cyanide candy. After a 3rd trip around the neighborhood, investigators were beginning to lose their patience. Finally, O'Brien directed them to the house he claimed he got the pixy sticks from. He told his version of the story again, claiming the occupants only opened the door a crack and handed out the candy. It was quickly learned that the owner of the home was an air traffic controller and he had not gotten home until 11 p.m. that Halloween night. He had over 200 people that could verify his alibi and whereabouts that evening. His wife and daughter had been home that entire evening but ran out of candy before the O'Briens even reached their front door. That's why their lights were out and no one answered the knocks. The police soon discovered that the O'Briens were in a lot of financial debt, over $100,000 to be exact. But at the same time, he had been telling co-workers at Texas State Optical that he was about to receive a large sum of money. O'Brien didn't have the most stable track record when it came to career opportunities. In 10 years, he had held over 21 jobs. All of his co-workers thought he was about to be fired from his current job. And outside of work, things were crumbling around O'Brien. Their car was about to be repossessed and their home was in foreclosure. When talking with O'Brien's co-workers, one of them told police that O'Brien had asked them to disturbing and unusual question. O'Brien had asked if just anyone could purchase potassium cyanide. O'Brien had also began taking night classes and asked his professor at Harris County Community College how much poison it would take to kill specific sized animals. A local witness from a wholesale chemical store came forward claiming that O'Brien came into his workplace right before Halloween asking to buy cyanide. O'Brien was told the smallest amount he could purchase was 5 pounds, so he left without buying anything at all. A search of the O'Brien's home was conducted. The investigators found pieces of pixy stick tops along with a pocket knife that had traces of plastic and candy on the blade. After hearing from the insurance agent, the police searched all the policies that were taken out on the O'Brien children. In January 1974, 10 months before the poisoning, 2 policies were taken out on O'Brien's children for $10,000. And a month before Halloween, he took out an additional $20,000 policy on each child. And then days before Timothy's death, an additional $20,000 was added to the total life insurance policy taken out on the children. That would be a total claim of $50,000 per child, or $100,000 if both children ate the cyanide candy. The day after his son's passing on Halloween, O'Brien called the insurance company asking for his claim money. Ronald Clark O'Brien was arrested on November 5, 1974. He was indicted on 1 count of capital murder and 4 counts of attempted murder. He pled not guilty to all charges. His trial started on May 5, 1975 in Houston, Texas. The prosecutor had a lineup of witnesses that showed the timeline and deliberation O'Brien took in killing his son Timothy. The following evidence and witnesses were the main pieces of incriminating evidence against Ronald O'Brien. A chemist who worked with O'Brien testified that O'Brien asked him how much cyanide would be fatal in the summer of 1973. The chemical supply salesman testified that O'Brien wanted to purchase cyanide from him, but the quantity wasn't the amount O'Brien wanted. Friends and co-workers close to O'Brien said that in the months before the death, he showed an unusual interest in cyanide. O'Brien was always talking about how much it would take to kill someone. The neighbor who had gone trick-or-treating with O'Brien said his son went to open the pixy stick he had gotten, but O'Brien jumped over a coffee table and grabbed it from the boy, saying something about it being too much sugar for nighttime. O'Brien's sister-in-law and brother-in-law both testify that at the funeral for Timothy, O'Brien was talking about how he planned to use the insurance money he collected from the children's death. He said he was going to take an extended vacation and purchase some items he had always wanted to buy. It only took the jury 46 minutes to convict Ronald O'Brien of murder and only 71 minutes to agree on the death sentence. In prison, inmates referred to O'Brien as the CANDYMAN, a notorious nickname that has now immortalized O'Brien's corrupted legacy. He appealed his case several times, but all appeals were rejected. Ronald Clark O'Brien died by lethal injection on March 31, 1984 in Huntsville, Texas. But he didn't leave this world without trying to garner some last-minute empathy. O'Brien wrote the following statement: "What is about to transpire in a few moments is wrong. However, we as human beings do make mistakes and errors. This execution is one of those wrongs, yet it doesn't mean our whole system of justice is wrong. Therefore, I would forgive all who have taken part in any way in my death. Also, to anyone I have offended in any way during my 39 years, I pray and ask your forgiveness, just as I forgive anyone who offended me in any way. And I pray and ask God's forgiveness for all of us respectively as human beings. To my loved ones, I extend my undying love. To those close to me, know in your hearts I love you one and all. God bless you all, and may God's best blessings be always yours. Ronald C. O'Brien. P.S. During my times here, I have been treated well by all Texas prison personnel." At the time of filming this video, Timothy Mark O'Brien would have been 53 years old.